we got the Eagles up 21-0 on the Dallas Cowboys, and then the Cowboys come roaring back due to big games on both sides of the ball here. The defense showed up pretty big. The Eagles gifted them a mess up on a punt return that got them good field position as well to the Dallas Cowboys. But let's talk about the offense and what we saw here. Again, another monster George Pickens week. 9 catches on 9 targets, 146 yards, a touchdown on top of it as well. And I just thought, Chris, you saw so much of what you've been seeing from Pickens building to over the last, really like the last 2 seasons, because, you know, Tom Brady kept pointing this out during the game. He kept saying George Pickens' best route is the slant route. And I could not agree more with Brady on this one. And I think this is where, you know, because people say, well, hey, Pickens has always been this guy. He just needed a quarterback. I could not disagree with that more. And I think if you watched Pickens in Pittsburgh early on, he was not playing like this from a consistent route by route basis, especially on those slant routes. Like, that was where he was not like an impactful player. He wasn't getting consistent separation there. He wasn't running good routes there, but he was this great deep threat who could win in contested situations. Now, based on the tape last season, especially even early on with Justin Fields, and he wasn't getting those targets, but it was on the film, like he was developing as a man-to-man route runner on these slants and quick hitters. And I know people are like, oh, slants, whatever, who cares? That's not where you're making big plays. It makes a world of freaking difference, and we just saw it all in this game here. He was excellent on those quick hitters. He was excellent against man coverage in this game. Man, just an unbelievable game from George Pickens here. What did you think when watching this Cowboys offense in this one?
So as I was watching it, I'm gonna try and sell you $1 million idea real quick, because to your point, seeing how often he was getting hit on a lot of those quick hitters, and it was even that slant route that went for, I think, around like 20 yards or so, that helped put them in a position for Aubrey to kick the field goal to allow them to get the win. I mean, it was those types of explosive plays. I would love to see if there was a website that had essentially that collected route tree data for each season for a wide receiver. And then I could see kind of how that development happens on a year in, year out basis. I don't have a name for it yet. I mean, something like perceiving, receiving, something along those lines. It'll come to me later if I think about it. But in this game, that's where you see that type of development. Yeah, we'll workshop it later. I mean, we'll talk about it later. Maybe they should cut this so nobody takes the idea. But this is where you see that type of, I would say, complementary receiving, whereas we've looked at CeeDee Lamb as this power slot player that, yeah, he could probably devastate a lot of zone coverage, and he can even win against man as well. But if you have another wide receiver that also has, I would say, not just the deep ball acumen, like a lot of folks were thinking George Pickens would be, he would essentially replace a lot of that wide receiver 2 or deep threat that they haven't had for a few years, but also be able to operate across the intermediate, like in the middle of the field on intermediate routes, be able to take slant routes for 15 to 20 yards. I mean, that's where the passing game really starts to take a step forward. And you saw that in this game, because as CeeDee Lamb was had a couple of really brutal drops in this game, and one that should have been a touchdown, having a guy like George Pickens to pick up some of that slack. I mean, that's what put the Dallas Cowboys in a position to get back in the game and also eventually win the game as well.
Yeah, 100%. The stuff with CeeDee Lamb, I want to come back to that in a second, but since you brought up, a website that might track, route running, success rates, stuff like that, I did punch in a little site called receptionperception.com, went to their full history data table.
That's a good website.
That's a good one. By the way, just for the historical record, I did not come up with the name because I'm not good at naming things, but we'll leave that to the history books on that one. Success rate for George Pickens on slant routes throughout his career: 2022, 69%, 2023, 78%, 2024, 82.4%. Big jumps every single year. So far this season, I haven't obviously done the full sample because the season's not over yet. He's at like 88%. He is unbelievable this year on those quick hitters. And the other thing that I think he's taking a step on is like the bigger dig routes, big over, stuff like that. Wasn't getting a lot of those in Pittsburgh, but that's been a big jump from him from a success rate standpoint as well. So again, just a lot of individual development from Pickens. CeeDee Lamb, it's crazy. Like, it's just like weird drops, for him. Yeah. And 7, we're showing it right now, 7 drops. And obviously everybody charts drops different. It's a subjective stat. 7 drops in 2 games versus the Eagles this season for CeeDee Lamb. It's just some catchable passes that he should be bringing in here. And to me, I know that this is going to sound counterintuitive, but it almost makes me less worried about Lamb in the long term, because he's the type of, somebody asked me during the game, like, analytically, everything is pointing away from Pickens, or towards Pickens and away from Lamb. Is Lamb like a sell in all formats? And I know for the most part, people's trade deadlines have passed, but like Dynasty League should be looking at moving the offseason. I was like, this is the type of player you'd look to sell, quote unquote. And then the next week he'd have 10 for 110 and 2 touchdowns. Like, I could completely see that happening on Thanksgiving against the Chiefs. I'd be a 0% surprised.
No, I wouldn't be surprised either, because it's not like Dak has turned away from him and completely focused on Pickens. And at the same time, we're seeing fewer targets going to CeeDee Lamb. And now we're talking about Ryan Flournoy or, Brevin Spanford. Well, I guess he caught a touchdown, so I guess he's somewhat relevant. But any of the other wide receivers in the offense, we're not clamoring to add those to our waiver priority for this week. We know where those targets are going. It's still condensed enough that this is going to be George Pickens and then CeeDee Lamb. It's just the results haven't been there. The opportunity has, but to your point and what we've seen so far over the past couple of weeks with those drops, again, one of those drops turns into a touchdown, and we're talking about CeeDee Lamb having over 90 yards somewhere and also a touchdown to go with it. And we'd be right back to, CeeDee Lamb is back. So it's just those one or two plays here and there that can really make the difference. And as long as Dak continues to target him as much as he has over these past few weeks, I think the results will definitely come at some point, and it could be just as early as Thursday.
Cowboys have a 13% chance to make the postseason, according to the New York Times. We shall see if they can get it done. It's 13%. It's not a very high percentage chance, but it's better than a 0% chance. The Eagles have a 99%, greater than 99% chance to make the postseason. They have a 98% chance to win the division, but they do lose this game, Chris, and that was despite the fact that A.J. Brown was involved early and often in this one right here. This was one of those games like, oh, hey, there's A.J. Brown. He's excellent, even in a non-favorable scheme matchup. Devontae Smith still had a nice game, and yet the Eagles dropped this one. What was your takeaway watching this offense here?
They were rolling at the start. And I would say the only concern that I had was more of the siloed nature of the offense, because typically we've looked at the Eagles as this rushing offense and using a lot of their success on the ground to set up shot plays down the field, whether it's been to A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith. But looking at Saquon Barkley, the number of tackles or hits at or behind the line of scrimmage, really just 22 yards on the ground in this game, you're not really able to see a lot of the just general flow of the offense that we would expect. So while I'm happy to see A.J. Brown, get 10 targets, and watching Devonta Smith, that catch that he had down the right, I think it was the right sideline in the first half, where he went almost completely parallel to the field in order to pick up a chunk gain. I think it was around 40 yards for that one. Those are the types of things you want to see from the wide receivers. But if they're not able to complement that on the back end with anything from Barkley, that really does kind of set them up for stalled drives, and of course setting them up for what you saw here today. So while from a fantasy standpoint, if you had Jalen Hurts, you're happy with either the tush push or even just him as a scrambler. But I would say for the entire offense as a whole, the hope would be that whether it's from the offensive line, injuries and shuffling they've had to do, they start to get back to, I would say, the complementary level of football that they've been able to do throughout most of the season, where it's like we're trying to get Saquon Barkley involved, and then we'll get some stuff to the wide receivers. So seeing it flip-flopped between the two, it was pretty interesting to watch, but you'd have to think that they're going to try and get back to some of the things that they prefer to do at some point in the next couple of weeks or so.
Yeah, Saquon scams his way with 7 catches for 52 yards, so like a not great, but not the worst fantasy point finish in the world here, but really concerning ground game. And you wonder if the absence of Lane Johnson ends up being something where they can't recover that ground game, especially because let's remember, this Cowboys defense is better now. Like Nate and I talked about this. It's definitely better now than it was to start the season. I think it will be going forward. Quentin Williams had a career high 8 pressures today, according to Next Gen Stats. That trade is aging really well for the Cowboys after it was like raked over the coals when it happened. Yeah. So good stuff for Cowboys there. We'll actually sort of kind of stick in the division here with the next game. Lions 34, Giants 27. We already talked about Jahmyr Gibbs, the dominant performance from him. We already talked about the 0 spot from Jameson Williams. So we can make up a little bit of ground here on this one, Chris. But anything else you wanted to note from the Lions outside of what Gibbs did and what JMO did not do in this game?
Nothing really else stood out. I would say if you were looking for a tight end option outside of Sam Laporta, I know some folks were looking to Brock Wright as a streaming option. I mean, just a few targets here and there. So I guess the general hope would be that Gibbs is not going to, again, suck up 12 targets on a week in, week out basis. So if Wright is running a route, I think he was around 77% of the routes today. So if he's out there at least getting his cardio in and earning a few targets, things might balance themselves out moving forward, and they might get a few more targets. But outside of that, wasn't too much really to report, at least from a fantasy standpoint, from the Lions passing game.
Yeah, Jared Goff did complete 28 of 42 passes. He was definitely somebody. He was targeting a lot of players like lined up in the backfield. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs was most of that. 16 completions players lined up in the backfield was the most in a game in the Next Gen Stats era. That's since 2016. So that was how the Lions got it done, quote, through the air here on this one. Isaac Tesla did run a route on about 53% of the dropbacks. Not that it mattered for fantasy because he got 1 target, 0 catches, but just something to monitor for the dynasty sickos out there. So let's talk about the Giants in this one. An all-time Jameis Winston performance in this one. Next Gen Stats note that he completed 18 of 36 passes for 366 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception in this game. His 13.6 air yards per completion is the highest mark in a game league-wide since week 1 of last year, and he completed 4 of 4 passes for 148 yards and a touchdown on attempts beyond 20 yards. Pressured on 50% of his dropbacks, did not take a single sack. He caught a touchdown on his first career reception from backup receiver Gunnar Olszewski, and the Giants lost. That's the Jameis Winston performance right there.
I mean, if we're going to have fun, just put Jameis Winston. Why weren't the Giants doing this earlier in the season? Because I have not watched a more entertaining game out of the Giants since then. It's before Jameis really got under center. But I would say that, at least for me, I wish that week 11 never happened for the Giants and then putting Jameis under center. Because remember last week against the Packers, they jump out to, let's say, a 7-0 lead against the Packers, and they tried to implement this ground and pound type of game in order to grind out a win. It got pretty close to it. I mean, of course, the Packers pull away towards the back end of it, but in that game last week against Green Bay, the negative 17% pass rate over expectation. So it's like you see this, and I was like, well, that's not the Jameis that I know. I know the Jameis that's going to press the ball down the field. I know the Jameis that's going to continue to chuck it no matter what game state his team is in. But at just 7.6 air yards per attempt last week, it was hard to try and map how this game was going to go. Of course, we figured that it was going to be more of an up-tempo match for the Giants because they were going to be trailing. But even when they were ahead, we were still seeing Jameis doing this stuff. I mean, 11 air yards per attempt. I mean, this is with Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton and Theo Johnson as your primary pass catchers here. I mean, that's the thing that I'm still trying to wrap my brain around, is that he's just like, screw it. I mean, they're down there somewhere and I'm going to figure it out. So this is the Jameis that I wanted to see when he first got the starting job last week. And so now after going from, I would say, the lesser version of himself to now this here, I do have at least a bit more optimism about any of the pass catch for the Giants moving forward, especially if we're going to get this. This is the Cleveland level Jameis that we're getting, but even though with fewer pass catchers involved here, I mean, we're still getting this type of performance, so I'll take it.
That stat that we showed from Sheil Kapadia there earlier, that the Giants are the only team to put up 500-plus yards of offense and lose this season. They've actually done it twice. They've put up 500-plus yards of offense and lost both games. The rest of the NFL is 7-0, according to Sheil, on those moments. So, yeah, an unreal game here for this Giants team. Wan'Dale Robinson, you mentioned it. 156 yards is a career high for Wan'Dale Robinson. His 10.5 air yards per target is the 4th highest of his career. The other 3 games is one week 3 of this season where he caught 1 pass. Who cares? We'll toss that out. The other one is the week 2 game against the Cowboys when their defense couldn't cover a soul. And then the other one was actually this year as well. So he's definitely been more of a downfield. I will give Wan'Dale credit. I don't give Wan'Dale a lot of credit, but he's actually getting to run some real downfield routes, and he is responding. And the Jameis pump and dump scam can bring anybody along for the ride, okay? It doesn't even matter if you're the old PPR scam receiver. If you're down there, Jameis is going to fire that thing if you're the number 1 read, and Wan'Dale's so obviously the number 1 read right now. He can get it done there. Incredible stuff. By the way, I thought it was funny that the Giants actually sent I mean, I guess they have to because he's got a C on his chest. I don't know, but they sent Russ out for the overtime kickoff, like the coin flip. It's like, do we really have to send Russ out there for that? It's almost insulting.
I mean, yeah.
Okay,
of all the people on the squad, like, why would you not want to have give Jameis Winston as much time on the mic as possible? I don't even care if he's just out there to call heads or tails. If we're gonna do it, let's just do it all the way and just give him a chance to talk anytime that we can.
I don't even care if it's Jameis. Just don't put look. I can't believe I'm caping up for Russ here. Don't put Russ in that situation where he's like, "Yeah, how you doing? How you doing, Jared? I don't know. Look at us. How do we get here? I don't know why
I'm here.
Anyways, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing here. So I'm assuming Jackson Dart will be back next week. He was not cleared. It was kind of a late situation here that Jameis Winston was named the starter. So we'll see what happens with Jackson Dart next week. I'm sure they want to be cautious. Of course, they should be cautious. So we'll see. Might be the last time that we see Jameis Winston. But if that's how he goes out in the 2025 season, catching a touchdown, throwing heaters down the football field, I think it's a pretty good way to go out